Greetings to all C3RF members and friends across Canada and indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom on their dedicated streaming channels to view this video summary of the C3RF update for 31 May 2024. The title of this update is called Jumping the Shark, and it notes that the expression had its start in Season 5, in a Season 5 episode of the television series Happy Days. The particular episode in question concerned itself with the ultra-cool hero, Fonzie, daring all odds to water ski jump over a pen containing a deadly shark. The run-up to the event took a tediously long time to effect, and a bored audience would come to see Fonzie's endless exertions as an inflection point for the Happy Days franchise. It was the point at which the series went from not sucking to outright sucking. And so it is today, as on a variety of fronts, we see formerly popular figures do and say such ridiculous things that their whole records and reputations are lost in the rearview mirror as their credibility jumps the shark. It would be hard to argue that such an inflection point has not been reached with our very own Prime Minister. The proof is in the pudding, as even his very own entourage of faithful talking heads and journalists have turned against him to actually ask point blank why Canadians hate him so. The Prime Minister has obviously jumped the shark, and it now matters not what wedge issue he brings to the fore against his nemesis, Pierre Poilievre. They all hit the floor with a thud and have the bounce of a dead cat. Gone are the days when charging your opponent with the old anti-abortion, misogynist, white nationalist shibboleths could be counted on to be amplified and pumped down the throats of docile Canadians by a rabid press corps. It would seem that journalists and citizens just don't buy the claim that Poilievre salivates over watching the country burn to the ground as a result of his Axe the Tax campaign. Canadians can be forgiven for being more than a little bored with such ad hominem attacks by their Prime Minister. After all, the unvaccinated among them were on the receiving end of such in the run-up to the 2021 federal election, when they were called misogynists and even racists for not getting jabbed. For their part, the truckers also had their turn in the insult barrel when they became a fringe group with unacceptable views. Such scapegoating continues to this day as the Prime Minister laser focuses on older Canadians who have more money and don't have to work as hard as their younger counterparts. Again, such insults may distract from the inflation brought on by Trudeau's own profligate policies, but they are long past the point of jumping the sharks with rank-and-file Canadians. If the loss of a credible storyline and therefore control over your audience in the entertainment sector can be described as jumping the shark, then the loss of control in the security environment might be termed a Code 203. Such an assignation is one of many in the penal code system that members of the security forces use to inform each other in shorthand fashion of an evolving criminal situation. Code 203 references the onset of mayhem and is indicative of an inability of on-site security personnel to establish control over the happenings. It's everyone for themselves, as all citizens, even the normally law-abiding ones, throw the rule of law out the window. Unfortunately, we see the rule of law coming under attack more and more in present-day Canada as security forces succumb to an unprecedented politicization that is emanating from the governing classes. It would appear that developments like Canadian Security Intelligence Service provided us with the latest example as it accordingly loses credibility and jumps the shark. CSIS can be seen to be a reluctant recipient of political attention on a variety of files. One is left scratching their heads, for instance, on how it could be part of the process that saw the relatively peaceful Proud Boys organization designated as a terrorist group. The designation came out of the blue in a slapdash fashion, as was seen by Canadian intelligence community as knee-jerk response to deeply infected with politics. After all, outside of a failure to loathe Western civilization, there was no evidence of violent intent on the part of the Proud Boys, let alone imminent action. There was, however, a perceived political gain to be had by the Canadian government, as it allowed it to cozy up to a Biden administration hell-bent on elevating right-wing extremism into a major national security concern. Certainly, the differing treatment afforded the boys over hardened terrorist outfits like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps or the IRGC, of Iran speaks about political volumes. The political bent being applied to CSIS operations can also be seen to be in play as it moves to designate those who oppose gender ideology as a violent threat to national security. As was the case with the Proud Boys, the deeming of hateful parents as a threat fits nicely with the efforts south of the border. And so it was that American parents have the temerity to oppose the LGBT policies of their school boards. They were tagged as domestic terrorists. Seen in this light, it becomes apparent that Western governments are fully captured by the idea that it is their own citizens that threaten their national securities. Forget about pro-Hamas crowds that wail for a Jewish genocide from the river to the sea, and forget about any number of migrants, legal or not, that may be transiting civ-like borders. It's the parents that need tending to. Surely such fanciful security assessments are a recipe for mayhem. As everyday Canadians come to understand that their own formerly trusted governing agencies have come together to accuse them of hatred and even treason, the further they drift away from heeding anything they have to say. How can such leaders be seen as credible and trustworthy when the narratives they spin are so overwrought and unsubstantiated? The violent threat posed by parents opposed to gender ideology being taught in the classroom is one such storyline that is discreditable on its surface. How can the federal government actually buy into such nonsense and even allocate $1.1 million on a purge fund to target such hateful parents? After all, are these parents really hateful or just concerned when they see credible reports that find that the risk of suicide for those who undergo gender-affirming surgery are 12-fold higher than for those who do not? A direct refutation of the assertion that gender-confused children are candidates for suicide if they do not receive irreversible hormone and surgical treatments. The ridiculous and dangerous narrative that is gender-affirming medical care for Canadian children can be seen in its full splendor in the case of Jazz Jennings. Jazz became the poster child of the movement when he, to become she, began her transition at the age of 3. Her mother and various entertainment figures prodded the related process along and were ultimately successful in castrating the young boy before giving her a neo-vagina which was all chronicled on the popular reality TV program I Am Jazz. All did not go well, however, as psychopathic adults presided over a transition that would leave the young adult with serious psychological and physical issues that were not of his making. As it stands now, the problems keep piling up, with a recent surgery resulting in the popping of her neo-vagina and the creation of a large wound requiring hasty skin grafting to close. This is the stuff that is being pushed on parents. They are the problem? Outside of parents, we're also seeing experienced military professionals being taken to task for failing to be educated in the military's cultural overhaul. They need to move along if they refuse to worship before the altar of critical race and gender theory, as no white supremacists will be tolerated. How odd is it that a link has now been established between those who would question non-traditional ideologies as a matter of conscience and morality and white supremacy? After all, when Canadians agreed that the state had no place in the bedrooms of the nation back in 1967, weren't they saying that citizens had a right to live their own private lives without being harassed by the criminal code? Where was the understanding, stated or otherwise, that they were agreeing to any need to accept such private inclinations as praiseworthy and suitable for passing on to their children? The rift between these citizens and leaders that would force them down an unwanted ideological path is large and speaks to a gaping charter breach of the right to free expression and conscience. Accordingly, and in tune with the Charter's own Section 52.1, are measures that create such a rift of no force or effect. In closing, a reminder to join us at CanadianCitizens.org, where you can see this update in its full glory, including all the links to all of the cited documents. Simply go to the News tab at the top of the page and select C3RF Member Updates from its drop-down menu. Until next time, this is Russ Cooper signing off, wishing you and yours much happiness and freedom.